Everybody, Fast Tippy here. Tonight we'll be looking at a replay of a game that was provided to me, and we will talk about the concept of predictability. If you play BattleCon where you always play the best moves you have available, often that means your opponent can call those moves, and they can do a lot of different ways. They can either clash those moves, they can play strong counter moves, or they can really defeat your moves in a lot of different ways. Tonight we have a game of Khadath, played by Kai, and Eligor, played by Magical John. Khadath is a character that uses his portals to basically block your opponent in, and Eligor is a stun trader type character who uses his unique ability to gain stun guard so that he can trade. This will start out with Blight Burst, which makes sense for Khadath. Khadath often has to spend his first beat setting up his trap so then he can manipulate it through the game, and this is one of his options. Eligor does Retribution Aegis, which is one of his most powerful attacks, but the issue with Retribution Aegis is that it uses both of his most powerful moves. Both Retribution and Aegis give Eligor soak, and they allow Eligor to trade very well. Often you want to spread Retribution Aegis out because it allows you to get soak over multiple beats, but doing it together makes for a very powerful attack, as you see here, where Eligor will take no damage at all, be able to close at any distance, even past the trap, as you can see, and trade back. Retribution Aegis is really one of Eligor's most powerful moves, if played correctly, and often if you're playing against Eligor you want to play moves to avoid it. I think in this case Khadath didn't really have that option unless he played very carefully, and so I think at this point this beat and the result of this beat makes sense. Now at this position Khadath has a lot of different moves, but I think Khadath actually does one of his most obvious moves, which is a strike. The reason strike makes sense at this point is that it's very difficult for your opponent to run away because the trap's right behind him, and so doing something like Hunter's Strike makes a lot of sense. But doing something like Hunter's Strike I feel is very predictable as well because of the positioning. It's something your opponent will probably see coming, and what we see is that Magical John actually does see this coming and is able to counter this move with counter. Because Eligor plays counter actually stuns someone that plays the same base as you. Since Khadath played strike as well, Khadath is just going to get stunned, and Eligor will get a free beat here. Again, Hunter's Strike is probably one of the most powerful moves here, but is also one of the most predictable. Khadath could have also done a number of moves involving drive with range, or perhaps some other moves that could have won just as easily and not have been as predictable. Now in this next beat, we'll see that Eligor antes a lot of his Sun Guard tokens, and I think this is a little aggressive, and we'll see this throughout the match. I feel that Magical John really plays Khadath's tokens a little haphazardly. You usually want to be fairly conservative with the tokens because if your opponent does dodge, as Khadath does in this case, it can put you in a position where you have not enough resources to power up a lot of your moves, such as Chained, or even to be able to trade without getting stunned. In addition, Eligor also antes his Force to get Stun Guard. So although he has Stun Guard 8, he just ended up losing a lot of resources because of his aggressive play. Kai here will teleport dodge and set up board positioning for the next beat. Now, beat 4 is very interesting, as we'll see, and the reason that it's interesting is that Eligor is about to get Retribution Aegis back. Now, like I said earlier, Retribution Aegis is by far one of Eligor's strongest attacks, but typically you want to spread Retribution and Aegis out so that you can get the maximum effect of that move and really get the soak over several beats. But what we'll see here is that Magical John is going to actually play Retribution Aegis, which again is powerful, but it's much less powerful without the tokens to ante to give him additional stun guard. So even though this works out in his favor because Khadath did Lure Burst, often this move would end up with Eligor stunned. If Khadath hit for 3, Eligor only would have gotten Soak 2, and Retribution Aegis would not have worked at all this beat. But as it turned out, Retribution Aegis ended up being, again, a pretty good move here. But in this case, most moves actually beat Retribution Aegis, so playing it in this case was extremely risky, I feel. And as we can see, Magic John played Retribution Aegis on beat 1, and he played it on beat 4, which is showing up to be a pattern that basically whenever this is available, he is going to ante it. And we'll see that Kai actually figures this out and responds to it later in the game. So as we move into beat 5, we're back into the same positioning we were a few beats ago, with the trap behind Eligor and with Khadath cornered. Last time, Kai played Hunter's Strike, and Magic John countered with Counter Strike and stunned him. What we'll see is that Khadath did Hunter's Snare, which I feel, again, if Khadath could have done something where he could have moved past his trap and put Eligor in a difficult position, as it would have been hard for him to close with the trap behind him. But instead, Khadath does Hunter's Snare. Snare will get the additional speed from Hunter, will likely be able to outspeed his opponent, even though I think this is a suboptimal use of Snare, because Snare really uses its stun immunity, is very powerful, and when you're getting additional speed, you're not really getting much use of that stun immunity. As you can see, Magic John is sticking to the same plan and being extremely predictable, playing Counter Strike right after he did Retribution Aegis, just like he did on beat 2. And so Counter Strike did work out for Magic John in this case, and he was able to pay off and deal quite a lot of damage to Khadath. So this whole game has been very predictable. Magic John has kind of been going through the same 3 attacks over and over. Kai has been mixing it up a bit, but for the most part has been playing very predictable moves and very consistent moves. And in fact, Kai again plays Teleport Dodge on this beat. I think this is a matter similar to Retribution Aegis, where Teleport and Dodge is probably Khadath's two most powerful moves, and you likely want to pair them apart and not pair them together. They are very powerful in a situation like this where you need to dodge, but by putting them together, I think it really restricts your options as you play through your further beats. Magic John goes crazy here and antes 5 tokens. I think this is a little nutty case on his tokens. I think he's using them a little too aggressively, and I think it would be more optimal for him to spread those tokens out so that he is not as wasteful with them from beat to beat. Now as we move into beat 7, Eligor is going to get Retribution Aegis back again. And throughout the game, whenever he's had Retribution Aegis, he has played Retribution Aegis. And so what we'll see is that Kai makes the call, and Kai goes, well, if he's going to do Retribution Aegis, what should I do? And we'll see what happens here as we move into beat 7. So Kai is setting up board positioning. All of the end beats are resolving, and Kai does something incredibly awesome here and plays Dimensional Exile. Dimensional Exile is an extremely awesome attack, but it is a predict style. If your opponent at all moves off the trap, if he does a run forward, if he does a dodge, if he does anything to move off the trap, then he'll void. But if Eligor plays as he has the whole game and plays predictably, then he's gonna take 25. So, may this all be a lesson to you. Be careful. Don't always pick the best moves every beat. Try to mix things up. Try to figure out what your opponent's doing and counter them. And try to just not be predictable. Because if you are, your opponents can often punish you hard. Alright. Have a good evening, everybody. Bye.